Good morning. My name is Sally Betzer, and I'm your worship associate today. I was raised in what I would call a vaguely Christian family. My great-great-grandfather emigrated from Denmark. He was a Lutheran minister. So for the most part, if my family did go to church, we went to a Lutheran church. As such, we typically attended on major Christian holidays like Easter and Christmas. Around Christmas, we would attend more to experience all of Advent, culminating in the Christmas Eve service, the big event. I liked Advent. It was nice to take the opportunity to think about things like peace, hope, and love. And some years we even lit purple and pink candles in our home. We never talked about any other religions growing up or their winter festivals. I vaguely knew about the holiday of Hanukkah, the Jewish festival of lights. Like many Christians, I thought it was an equivalent holiday to Christmas. Both holidays had gifts and special foods, family gatherings, and candles. But there were no special TV specials for Hanukkah, no commercials, no town decorations, no day off of school. Having a Scandinavian background, I had heard of Yule logs, St. Lucia, and even solstice, a pagan holiday. My family ate stollen and abelskiver, pickled herring and dense rye bread, and opened gifts on Christmas Eve, when many Danes typically celebrate with their family. My family still celebrates some of these traditions. I was told that while no one knew exactly when Jesus was born, the Christian church selected the time around the winter solstice, since it would be easier to convert the pagans to Christianity if they were already celebrating something. Let's just add Jesus to their solstice celebrations. We can even refer to him as the light of the world. I realize what a mishmash of traditions, practices, holidays, beliefs, and folklore my celebrations have become. I'm embarrassed at times because I'm not a Christian. I'm also not a pagan chanting for the light to return. Then why do I love so many things about this season? I get excited when I see the neighbors hooking up lights on Thanksgiving afternoon. I love laying under our Christmas tree watching the twinkling lights even after my family has gone to bed. I still enjoy putting out the nutcracker and the snowman. I look forward to making special cookies that I only make this time of the year. Even though I still like some of the aspects of the Christmas/solstice traditions, my dream is to one day celebrate the entire month of December, far away from the stress, commercialism, and franticness. Out in a cabin in the woods, amidst snow-covered hills, next to a roaring fire. To spend the time with those I love with no commitments other than being together. Playing games, reading, napping, watching movies, and telling stories. Making and eating our favorite foods without regret. It's funny. As I was writing this, I realized it sounds like lockdown during the plague. So I guess my favorite lights at this time of the year are cozy fires, fresh glistening snow on a cloudless night, twinkling stars, and the light reflecting on the moon. These are the lights that help me keep going during these long, dark nights.
You will all be shocked to hear that I was a Girl Scout. I was part of a troop all throughout elementary school and attended Girl Scout day camps and sleepaway camps for years. And one of the things that Girl Scouts do is go camping and learn how to build campfires. And the first step of building a campfire, at least back then when there were fewer people using campgrounds, to be honest, was to send a bunch of kids out throughout the campsite to look for small branches and twigs that had fallen to the ground. Anybody remember that? Yeah. As I recall, our leaders probably brought some cut firewood, but it was our job to gather what could be used as kindling. We learned how to lay a fire, how to get the right combination of air and fuel so it would burn correctly, whether that was a teepee or a lean-to or a log cabin shape. And we would pile some of the small branches and light the newspaper or the dried tinder. That fire would warm us up and cook our food, and when it died down to coals, we'd make s'mores or banana boats for dessert. Last week, we talked about going into the darkness, the nurturing darkness, the darkness of rest and renewal. And this week, we're talking about kindling the light of winter holidays, a return of the sun, and the miracles that come from going ahead and starting something anyway, even if you don't know how it's going to end. It feels important to talk about those two things in an interconnected way, because I have to tell you, we need more than 1 week in the nurturing dark. I am not going to say, okay, resting's done, let's get back to the light again. And frankly, no one wishes to sit in the dark, especially in the winter, without a fire burning. Parts of the world, you might freeze. And so rather, the hearth and the fire and the flame of hope and dreaming and renewal are that which allow us to go into the nurturing dark. The goal is not to set everything ablaze, eliminating the darkness. The goal is to kindle the flame that one may rest comfortably. In the next 2 weeks, is it really just 2 weeks? Yes, it is. Various folks among us celebrate Hanukkah and solstice and Christmas and Kwanzaa. Hanukkah and solstice celebrate miracles of light. Christmas celebrates the metaphorical bringing of light into the world. Kwanzaa, which begins on December 26th, is not specifically about light, but is celebrated by lighting candles. Hanukkah is a minor holiday in Judaism, but its location near Christmas gives it a bit of outsized recognition, as Sally noted. And yet, I love Hanukkah. I have lit Hanukkah candles in my home for 30 years now, since living in New York City with my then girlfriend, Ibi, who is Jewish. Now I celebrate in my home every year, but also with our dear family friends, Tom and Rivka and Lior. Hanukkah celebrates the miracle of the oil. In 168 BCE, Jerusalem had been taken over by Greek and Syrian forces. Antiochus III had allowed the Jewish population to practice their religion in peace, but his son, Antiochus IV, was not as conciliatory. And instead, he ordered the army to take over the Holy Second Temple. Now, Jewish people, like Muslim people, follow rules laid out in the Hebrew scriptures and the Quran that forbid the use of graven images of God. And they also consider pork as well as shellfish to be treif or unclean. And so when Antiochus IV attacked the Jewish population, not only did he kill thousands of people, but he also defiled the temple by putting up images of Zeus and sacrificing pigs in the temple. Can you imagine? It would be like someone spray painting hate speech and dumping a load of manure on the altar. But the Jews, even though they were deeply outnumbered, fought back. They fled to the hills, and then, led by Judah Maccabee, the son of a priest, they practiced guerrilla warfare tactics until the Syrians retreated. And then, like Lynn Unger describes, the people needed to return from the hills and unlearn the years of hiding. Light fires that can be seen for miles, that dance and spark and warm the frozen marrow. Declare your presence, your loyalties, your truths for which you do not expect to have to die. Like any people fighting for their religion, the first thing they needed to do was clean and rededicate the temple. The cleaning part was comparatively easy, probably really gross, but easy. But the rededication was a little trickier because they had to rebuild the altar and light the menorah, which was then a candelabrum whose 7 branches represented knowledge and creation and were meant to be kept burning at all times. But you have to burn purified oil in the menorah, and they only had enough oil for 1 day, and it took 8 days to purify the oil. They might have given up. They might have just left the light unkindled until they had purified the next batch of oil. It might have been the logical thing to do. But miracles rarely hinge on logic. Miracles hinge on faith. Even faced with impossible odds, humans try. They swim across oceans and channels, and they sail across seas. They ask for healing from impossible illnesses. They build skyscrapers. And sometimes they light candles. Even when the opposing army is just outside the gate. They move forward even when the way seems impossible. And they rest. And they try to return to the normalcy of setting the table and feeding the children. They return to the gentleness of hearth and home, to a time of rest and renewal and the everyday miracles that make up a life. One of those everyday miracles is the winter solstice, the time we celebrate as the return of the light. The miracle is that in the Earth's cycle of rotating around the sun, we have seasons, times when the days are longer or shorter, times when the weather is great for planting crops and harvesting those, and time when the earth lays fallow. Nowadays, it's just science, and we trust that the sun will return. We know when and how, and our smartphones tell us when the sun will rise and set on a particular day. But can you imagine what it must have been like centuries ago when the days got shorter and shorter, and it got darker and colder? And the elders would tell you that the sun would return, that it wouldn't be cold forever, but what a joy when it actually happened. Something to celebrate indeed. We will talk more about Christmas in the next couple of weeks, as we should. But surely the celebrations of light influenced how the birth of Jesus was celebrated. As far as scientists can tell, the birth probably happened in April. The Bible certainly doesn't give us a date. But as Sally also said, if you were trying to get folks to celebrate the birth of Jesus as a metaphor for God sending light into the world, wouldn't it make sense to celebrate it when people were used to celebrating the return of the actual sun? Holidays focusing on light fit in with the deepest level of humanity. Our need to make meaning and tell stories. Our need to gather around the hearth or the fire with family and friends, and make music together, and tell stories, and play games, and feast and dance. It is good to rest in the darkness, and it is good to kindle the light. Each of us has a role to play, whether it's gathering the kindling, or keeping the fire burning, or chopping the wood. We can tell stories and remind the youngsters that the light really does return, that hard times come around again and again, but so does joy. We are meaning-making creatures, drawn to the light, but nurtured by the dark. May we ever be reminded of the power of hope and the power of love. Because love and hope, my friends, change everything. Blessed be, and amen.